Before the Fellowship was the greatest story you've never heard. I'm Cameron.
I'm Dan.
I'm Greg.
Join us as we read and react to the Silmarillion by J.R.R. Tolkien. Last time, we continued chapter 24. The Valar discussed Eärendil's fate, and Manwë decreed that Eärendil, Elwing, and their sons would decide to join their fate to men or elves. Eärendil and Elwing chose the fate of the elves. Vingalot, Eärendil's ship, was hallowed, and Eärendil gained the ability to sail through the heavens and beyond the confines of the world. With the Silmaril in his brow, he appeared as a star at sunrise and sunset. Elwing befriended the birds and learned from them how to fly. She met Eärendil when he returned from his voyages. In Middle-earth, all peoples saw the light of the Silmaril in the western sky and wondered what it meant. Maedhros and Maglor rejoiced, knowing that a Silmaril had been secured from evil. Meanwhile, the hosts of the Valar, along with the Vanyar, the Noldor under Finarfin, and the Teleri, prepared to wage war on Morgoth. Today, we conclude chapter 24 and Quenta Silmarillion, beginning on page 251 of the second edition. Of the march of the hosts of the Valar to the north of Middle-earth, little is said in any tale. For among them went none of those elves who had dwelt and suffered in the hitherlands, and who made the histories of those days that still are known. And tidings of these things they only learned long afterwards from their kinsfolk in Aman. But at the last, the might of Valinor came up out of the west, and the challenge of the trumpets of Eönwë filled the sky. And Beleriand was ablaze with the glory of their arms. For the hosts of the Valar were arrayed in forms young and fair and terrible, and the mountains rang beneath their feet. The meeting of the hosts of the west and of the north is named the Great Battle and the War of Wrath. There was marshaled the whole power of the throne of Morgoth, and it had become great beyond count, so that Onfoglith could not contain it, and all the north was aflame with war. But it availed him not. The Balrogs were destroyed, save some few that fled and hid themselves in caverns inaccessible at the roots of the earth. And the uncounted legions of the orcs perished like straw in great fire, or were swept like shriveled leaves before a burning wind. Few remained to trouble the world for long years after, and such few as were left of the three houses of the elf friends, fathers of men, fought upon the part of the Valar. And they were avenged in those days for Baragund and Barahir, Galdor and Gundor, Huor and Hurin, and many others of their lords. But a great part of the sons of men, whether of the people of Uldor or others new come out of the east, marched with the enemy, and the elves do not forget it. Then, seeing that his hosts were overthrown and his power dispersed, Morgoth quailed, and he dared not to come forth himself. But he loosed upon his foes the last desperate assault that he had prepared. And out of the pits of Angband there issued the winged dragons that had not before been seen. And so sudden and ruinous was the onset of that dreadful fleet that the host of the Valar was driven back. For the coming of the dragons was with great thunder and lightning and a tempest of fire. But Eärendil came, shining with white flame, and about Vingalot were gathered all the great birds of heaven, and Thorondor was their captain. And there was a battle in the air all the day and through a dark night of doubt. Before the rising of the sun, Eärendil slew Encalagon the Black, the mightiest of the dragon host, and cast him from the sky. And he fell upon the towers of Thangorodrim, and they were broken in his ruin. Then the sun rose, and the host of the Valar prevailed, and well nigh all the dragons were destroyed, and all the pits of Morgoth were broken and unroofed, and the might of the Valar descended into the deeps of the earth. There Morgoth stood at last at bay, and yet unvaliant. He fled into the deepest of his mines, and sued for peace and pardon. But his feet were hewn from under him, and he was hurled upon his face. Then he was bound with the chain Angainor, which he had worn aforetime, and his crown, his iron crown, they beat into a collar for his neck, and his head was bowed upon his knees. And the two Silmarils which remained to Morgoth were taken from his crown, and they shone unsullied beneath the sky, and Eönwë took them and guarded them. Thus an end was made of the power of Angband and the North, and the evil realm was brought to naught. And out of the deep prisons a multitude of slaves came forth beyond all hope into the light of day, and they looked upon a world that was changed. For so great was the fury of those adversaries that the northern regions of the western world were rent asunder, and the sea roared in through many chasms, and there was confusion and great noise, and rivers perished or found new paths, and the valleys were upheaved and the hills trod down, and Sirion was no more. Then Eönwë, as herald of the Elder King, summoned the elves of Beleriand to depart from Middle Earth. But Maedhros and Maglor would not hearken, and they prepared, though now with weariness and loathing, to attempt in despair the fulfillment of their oath. For they would have given battle for the Silmarils, were they withheld, even against the victorious host of Valinor, even though they stood alone against all the world. And they sent a message, therefore, to Eönwë, bidding him yield up now those jewels which of old Feanor their father made, and Morgoth stole from him. But Eönwë answered that the right to the work of their father, which the sons of Feanor formerly possessed, had now perished, because of their many and merciless deeds, being blinded by their oath, and most of all because of their slaying of Dior and the assault upon the havens. The light of the Silmarils should now go into the west, whence it came in the beginning, and to Valinor must Maedhros and Maglor return, and there abide the judgment of the Valar, by whose decree alone would Eönwë yield the jewels from his charge. Then Maglor desired indeed to submit, for his heart was sorrowful, and he said, "The oath says not that we may not bide our time. And it may be that in Valinor all shall be forgiven and forgot, and we shall come into our own peace." But Maedhros answered that if they returned to Aman, but the favor of the Valar were withheld from them, then their oath would still remain, but its fulfillment be beyond all hope. And he said, "Who can tell to what dreadful doom we shall come, if we disobey powers in their own land, or purpose ever to bring war again into their holy realm?" Yet Maglor still had held back, saying, "If Manwë and Varda themselves deny the fulfillment of an oath, to which we name them in witness, is it not made void?" But Maedhros answered, "But how shall our voices reach to Iluvatar, beyond the circles of the world? And by Iluvatar we swore in our madness, and called the everlasting darkness upon us, if we kept not our word. Who shall release us?" "If none can release us," said Maglor, "then indeed the everlasting darkness shall be our lot, whether we keep our oath or break it. But less evil shall we do in the breaking." Yet he yielded at last to the will of Maedhros, and they took counsel together how they should lay hands on the Silmarils. And they disguised themselves, and came in the night to the camp of Eönwë, and crept into the place where the Silmarils were guarded. And they slew the guards, and laid hands on the jewels. Then all the camp was raised against them, and they prepared to die, defending themselves unto the last. But Eönwë would not permit the slaying of the sons of Feanor, and departing unfought, they fled far away. Each of them took to himself a Silmaril, for they said, since one is lost to us, and but two remain, and we two alone of our brothers, so it is plain that fate would have us share the heirlooms of our father. But the jewel burned in the hand of Maedhros in pain unbearable, and he perceived that it was as Eönwë had said, and that his right thereto had become void, and that the oath was vain. And being in anguish and despair, he cast himself into a gaping chasm filled with fire, and so ended. And the Silmaril that he bore was taken into the bosom of the earth. And it is told of Maglor that he could not endure the pain with which the Silmaril tormented him, and he cast it at last into the sea. And thereafter he wandered ever upon the shores, singing in pain and regret beside the waves. For Maglor was mighty among the singers of old, named only after Daeron of Doriath. But he came never back among the people of the elves. And thus it came to pass that the Silmarils found their long homes, one in the airs of heaven, and one in the fires of the heart of the world, and one in the deep waters. In those days there was a great building of ships upon the shores of the western sea, and thence in many a fleet the Eldar set sail into the west, and came never back to the lands of weeping and of war. And the Vanyar returned beneath their white banners, and were borne in triumph to Valinor. But their joy in victory was diminished, for they returned without the Silmarils from Morgoth's crown, and they knew that those jewels could not be found or brought together again unless the world be broken and remade. And when they came into the west, the elves of Beleriand dwelt upon Tol Eressëa, the lonely isle that looks both east and west, whence they might come even to Valinor. They were admitted again to the love of Manwë and the pardon of the Valar, and the Teleri forgave their ancient grief, and the curse was laid to rest. Yet not all the Eldaliae were willing to forsake the hitherlands, where they had long suffered and long dwelt, and some lingered many an age in Middle-earth. Among those were Círdan the shipwright, and Celeborn of Doriath, with Galadriel his wife, who alone remained of those who led the Noldor to exile in Beleriand. In Middle-earth dwelt also Gilgalad the High King, and with him was Elrond half-elven, who chose, as was granted to him, to be numbered among the Eldar. But Elros his brother chose to abide with men. And from these brethren alone has come among men the blood of the firstborn, and a strain of the spirits divine that were before Arda. For they were the sons of Elwing, Dior's daughter, Lúthien's son, child of Thingol and Melian. And Eärendil, their father, was the son of Idril, Celebrimbor, Turgon's daughter of Gondolin. But Morgoth himself, the Valar thrust through the door of night, beyond the walls of the world, into the timeless void. And a guard is set forever on those walls, and Eärendil keeps watch upon the ramparts of the sky. Yet the lies that Melkor, the mighty and accursed, Morgoth Bauglir, the power of terror and of hate, sowed in the hearts of elves and men, are a seed that does not die and cannot be destroyed. And ever and anon it sprouts anew, and it will bear dark fruit, even unto the latest days. Here ends the Silmarillion. If it has passed from the high and the beautiful to darkness and ruin, that was of old the fate of Arda marred. And if any change shall come and the marring be amended, Manwë and Varda may know, but they have not revealed it, and it is not declared in the dooms of Mandos. So, in summary, the hosts of the West meet Morgoth in battle. Although his power had grown immensely, the Valar destroyed nearly all the Balrogs and Orcs. Men joined the Valar in the fight, but others side with Morgoth. Driven to the end, Morgoth unleashes winged dragons that had not before been seen. Eärendil arrives in his ship with all the great birds of heaven, and they win victory against the dragons. Morgoth is again chained by Angainor, and his iron crown is turned into a collar. And the Eönwë takes and guards the two remaining Silmarils. The continent is badly misshapen. The seas spill in from great chasms, valleys are upheaved, and hills leveled. Maedhros and Maglor, despite their weariness, attempt to take back the Silmarils. Eönwë declares that they have forfeited their right to them by their wicked and merciless deeds, especially the killing of Dior. Maedhros and Maglor are summoned to Valinor to face judgment. They disagree on how to proceed, but eventually Maedhros persuades Maglor to take them by force. They successfully steal the two Silmarils, but the touch of the jewels burns them. Maedhros sees that Eönwë's words were true and casts himself into a gaping chasm. That Silmaril is taken into the bosom of the earth. Maglor casts his Silmaril into the sea, and thus the Silmarils found their final homes. One in the airs of heaven, one in the fires of the heart of the world, and one in the deep waters. The Eldar build great ships, and many return to the west. The elves of Beleriand settle upon Tol Eressëa, but some elves remain in Middle-earth. Círdan, Celeborn, and Galadriel, Gil-galad, and Elrond, who chooses the fate of elves, while Elros chooses the fate of men. Morgoth is sent to the timeless void, and Eärendil keeps watch upon the sky. But the seeds of Morgoth's lies remain in the hearts of elves and men. Wow, so a lot, yeah, let's just clap. Good job, guys. You made it to the end of the Silmarillion.
Yay.
The official Silmarillion. There's more to come, but good job. You did it. It's like a postscript to come. You did it. Good job. We met the winged dragons and enough of Morgoth's forces to fill the land of Anfaglith. And we learned about the final resting place of the Silmarils. A lot happened.
Mm-hmm. Pretty cool. It's pretty cool.
It's crazy that, all right, so first thing I want to talk about is the catalyst that led to this final battle. Because for a long time, one could ask, why aren't the Valar getting more involved?
Right. I thought that too.
And then it's like, okay, now they're coming, and it's like they have an unbeatable force, when they're all coming together. So it was Eärendil, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who was the catalyst for it?
Yep.
And he was both an elf and a man, so he could speak for both. Is that right? I'm right.
But did he speak for the trees?
Trees didn't do anything bad.
No.
Trees are
Eärendil the Lorax.
So that's cool. And then does he have like new powers now? He like flies with a ship in the air? Like Top Gun, Maverick?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I just thought that was interesting. Like this whole book where like Morgoth is doing bad stuff and the Valar are discerning what to do. They're like withdrawn, kind of protecting their own world from the evils, guarding the light that they have, but they're not getting involved.
I wonder if unspoken here, there's kind of a mandate from Iluvatar to wait for this moment to proceed. They because it talks about this, this kind of prophecy that it would require someone petitioning on behalf of both men and elves.
Right.
So it may just be that was the, ordained time for this action.
That's true. Greg, I don't know if your mic is on. It's like every time we do this. Are you sure it's coming through your mic? It sounds a little roomy, boomy.
Might be the room I'm into, but
Could be.
I don't know why this. How's that?
I think that's better.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's better.
I don't know why, but my sound settings, they default to like low input volume. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I like this this particular line in this battle where it says that the orcs perish like straw in a great
Yeah.
fire,
I
or
was
were
just looking
swept
at
like shriveled leaves before a burning wind.
Yeah.
It's just the like it's kind of what you're saying, right? Seemingly at any time the Valar could have pushed into Balerion or like into the north and just wiped out Morgoth's armies, but they waited. But just the decisive victory, that imagery, I remember doing some yard work and burning some brush, and just how hot the fire got, and the flames were probably 35 feet high, So I'm just kind of imagining like wind sweeping through that and just burning these shriveled leaves, like just the speed with which they're just totally decimated.
It felt a bit nuclear.
Nuclear?
Like, I mean, yeah, nuclear. Yeah, like a nuclear atom bomb. Just the disintegration of them, almost very powerful.
And then Morgoth has multiple winged dragons. I forgot he had more than one, but I remember reading about Encalagon the Black, but he has multiple winged dragons. He was
they were spawned from Glaurung, right? They were. That's what we read a few chapters ago. There was a bunch of them that were.
Oh, really?
His or her, or Zay or Zem's spawn.
I think that
I don't know.
Right, because Glaurung's like the.
That's true. Good point.
Yeah.
Okay,
like
242 is the last mention of Glaurung.
242.
Yeah.
Yes, and then came dragons of the brood of Glaurung, and they become now many and terrible.
Oh yeah, they're the ones who kind of won the previous battle, but they didn't have wings. Are you saying that these ones went back and grew some wings? Maybe.
I don't know, because
I don't know how dragons are made. I don't know how Morgoth makes them.
No, I think you're interpreting it that they don't have wings, but the fact is just that the dragons came. We don't know whether.
We do know, because in the reading we just said, it mentions that they have wings.
No, I'm talking about in 242. You don't know. Your interpretation is that they don't have wings, but it doesn't say that there.
I know, but it's because of what we just read, because it talks about the wings being something we haven't seen before.
I got you.
Yeah,
maybe they'd like tuck their wings against their back or something.
Maybe they had just stubs. Like,
wait, where? Which page does it have the wing?
Top of 252.
They're issued the winged dragons that had not before been seen.
Nice.
So yeah, I guess they were new dragons then.
Yeah, they're new dragons.
That's crazy.
Like, where did these come from?
Have either of you watched Masters of the Air?
I've watched the first 2 or 3 episodes.
It's like the Band of Brothers follow-up.
Yeah.
And it has some pretty brutal air battles in it depicted.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what that makes me think. I know you're saying Top Gun Maverick, but like there's something about that. He's flying his ship around, with with all these birds and dragons swarming around.
It's like a flying water ship, right?
Yeah, it's like a seafaring ship that flies.
Like the Flying Dutchman ship.
Yeah, it's so like fantastical. Like you can just picture having a row of cannons on the side of the ship or something, and
I'd
just
like to see Peter Jackson film that.
It feels like Hayao Miyazaki almost.
Yeah.
But interestingly, what it says is that it was Eärendil who slew Uncalagon. Like it wasn't like he rammed him with this shit. Well, maybe he did, but it sounds like he somehow, took out his sword and fought him or something.
Who was it that killed the other dragon? Was it Turin or
Turin?
What?
Turin killed one. And then I guess Greg Findel, Greg Findel, who's here.
That wasn't a dragon. That was a Balrog, I think.
Oh.
Yeah, no, Turin killed Glaurung. And then that's interesting because actually it's always a man that kills dragons, right? It's always a man that's slaying a dragon. It's always a George.
What do you think that means?
That is slaying a dragon. I don't know. I don't know if it's sloppy writing or if it's the allegory that Tolkien professes to hate, or he is a Brit and loves St. George and loves the imagery of a man slaying a dragon.
Maybe.
But I am no man. And then
it's interesting that Rose actually throws the Silmaril into the water at the end of the movie.
Yeah. Didn't expect that, did you?
Because that was like the special features, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And she's singing, right? It says, hold on, it says that, I don't know if it's Maglor.
Yeah,
that's
Maglor.
her nickname, I guess. She wandered ever upon the shore singing, "My heart will go on."
That whole section was pretty interesting too, of Maedhros and Maglor, kind of this. I like how it says it here that they're just weary now. They've like committed to this oath, and they're ready to be done with this, even if it means their death, or it says they would not hearken, and they prepared, though now with weariness and loathing, to attempt in despair the fulfillment of their oath. And you can just picture them like just totally worn down, hunched over, and like really wanting no part in this anymore, but knowing they're still bound to this oath. It's kind of tragic too, because Maglor seems to have the good sense to recognize our fate is kind of set in a way. Like we're doomed to the everlasting darkness, or whatever it's called. And he's wise to recognize, if that is our fate, it would be better to do it with less evil than more. But Maedhros wins out in the end, and they kill more people and continue the bloodshed.
Less evil shall we do in the breaking of the oath.
We talk about the elemental end of the Silmarils.
Yeah. Earth, fire, wind, heart. Captain Planet.
Yeah, because we have. I guess we do have all four. I was going to say we didn't have all four, but we do, because we have a twofer. Fires of the Heart of the World. Which...
Oh man, I didn't think Tolkien would stoop that low to steal from Captain Planet.
But we have wind, we have water, and then we have the fires of the heart of the world. My next question was like, why did he say that again?
Ulmo could have found the one in the deep waters, right?
Maybe.
Come on, people.
But maybe Ulmo had zero need for it. Maybe, like Tom Bombadil, like with the ring, he'd just lose it.
No, I think I don't think that's the reason. It just says they can't find him.
It
Interesting.
wasn't. It didn't want to be found.
Yeah,
Perhaps.
maybe. And then Monway, like with the heirs of heaven.
Yeah, wait. What happened to the one with the heirs of heaven? What does that mean?
That's one that's in the stars.
Okay.
No, that's the one that. Well, that's the one that's in that Eärendil carries in his brow. And so when he traverses the skies and the heavens, that's why it's there. So that one is still accessible to them, but they seem to leave it there.
It's interesting to me. So Feanor's oath from like way towards the beginning, it seems almost like a noble thing because he's trying to take them back from Morgoth, who stole them and is like not a worthy holder of them. But then even at the end, the oath still holds when even they're going back to Valinor with the Silmarils. And it's like, even then they hold to that oath that they can't break to just possess them.
It's ugly.
It is.
Now that we've ended the Silmarillion, at least that part of the story, do you guys remember the appendix? I think it's the first one in the Return of the King.
No.
It's a summary of the Silmarillion. It's a summary of Feanor and what ends up happening before. It's really cool.
Wait.
Maybe.
Oh, you're talking about the book?
Yeah. There's like an appendix section in The Return of the King that has like a pretty decent summary of the whole Silmarillion, or at least just the main events.
Summa of the Silmarillion. What's the thing that sticks out to you guys from the Silmarillion? Like after reading through it, we have a conclusion to the Silmarils, being tied to the fate of Arda. What sticks out to you guys?
Well, this is I'm kind of cheating because I'm pretty sure this is the exact same answer I gave in our very first episode, but there's a lot of evil in this story. There's a lot of treachery, and it seems like even the people that are trying to do good things are very flawed and there's a lot of wrongdoing even on their part. But at the same time, there's a lot of hope in the story. There's always like this renewal of hope, and there are real true heroes that emerge in the midst of all that darkness. And I think that's part of why I love the story so much, is that it's not just this like dwelling in the swampy evil. It's like there's people that fight and resist it, and even as flawed as they are, they just live their lives in pursuit of goodness and truth and beauty. And I don't know. So there's a lot of characters that do that, and it happens all over the place. Sometimes in sacrifice, sometimes in those who were captured and like tortured and tormented, but they resist and try. But I still think one of the best examples of that is from early on when Maedhros is captured and he's bound to the cliffs of Thangorodrim, and then I always forget which. It's Fingon. Fingon is his close friend who comes to rescue him, And so this is on page 110. This goes way back then, but just this, he sees him hanging there, and he is in anguish, seeing his friend that way. And Maedhros just begs him to kill him. And so he strings an arrow, and seeing no better hope, he cried to Manwë, saying, "O king, to whom all birds are dear, speed now this feathered shaft, and recall some pity for the Noldor in their need." And then in that moment, Thorondor appears to rescue them. But just those kinds of moments, like Maedhros he had some good qualities, he had some virtue, but he also, to the very end, chose to stay planted in the oath of Fëanor. But even he's like part of this greater story where there's heroes and there's hope.
I think the thing that has hit me the most, well, it's twofold. One, the corruption of the heart, even when pursuing after goods. And then two would be like, I'm still hung up on the fact that every time man meddles with elves, like that led to the fall of like 3 kingdoms. That was just an interesting thing for me.
Yeah, I don't need to go off on a tangent actually, because we're running out of time. But I was moved generally, like when I think at a very high level, by the characters in the story. Like the characters are really vital and real to me, and particularly that they have critical flaws to them, like they're brash or greedy or
they don't understand the nature of the Silmarils after years of reading this book.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. They're British. But yet they have this virtue that's like heroic. This one heroic virtue, like was it Turin or Tuor? No, I get them mixed up. But he was in like a band of ruffians, and he's like robbing from people and killing people. But then he ends up being the one who saves the entire city, from the dragon. So I'm impressed with how people can have flaws, vices, but they can also be heroic and die out of love and charity, and as ultimately examples of virtue, because they did the thing, laying down their life for their friends, the most loving thing you can do. And then the other thing is, the story started with the music of the Ainur, and we heard that there was a discordant theme that was woven in. So that was Melkor. And then Iluvatar took that theme and wrote it into his third theme. And then you see how it plays out with the story. It's like, okay, let's behold your music, I think he says at the beginning. And the Valar have an idea of kind of how their part plays into it, but they can't see, to the end of time. And that's why they let Melkor, they think Melkor is like actually repentant, that he's sincere. And they're like, sure, do your penance. They don't see beyond, their limits. But then we see how the music plays out, and Iluvatar sees how this third theme can be more triumphant, more beautiful, more grand, because you have these discordant themes. So you have a Baron. It goes back to what I was mentioning before, like about his heroic virtue. You have Baron formed in this fallen world. Because of the discord in the world, he becomes this great hero. And that is what the third theme of Iluvatar is. It's all these heroes rising up, and it's this great battle at the end. I would love to hear the music.
Which that goes back to your question at the beginning of our discussion about why did they wait. It must be related to the great music.
They didn't know, or they knew that they
foresaw
part.
it. Yeah, they knew their part. They played their part.
Right.
And Manwë would have to just play his part until he didn't know what to do, and then he'd ask Iluvatar, and then have one decision that was made because of that. But besides that, they were all just playing their part together. They didn't have it all in mind. That's really cool.
It is interesting, though, in light of what you shared just now, that we know things that happen in the future. Like Morgoth is banished to the timeless void, but we know that what's his name? Sauron is see, right. He doesn't even matter. He's just the deputy baddie. He's not even the main big baddie.
Right.
But we know that he unleashes his fury on Middle Earth in the future at some point, and there's more to it still. And I think that's part of, I guess this complements the Lord of the Rings in a great way, because even though there's a fourth age that's after the Lord of the Rings, it's kind of this end of a certain time where now the elves are declining and they're returning to the west, all of them, including Elrond and whoever's left living. So we kind of get this bookend there now where we can see why the elves returning to the west is so significant at the end of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, good point. It's the Age of Men in the fourth age, right?
Right.
Cool. All right. Well, we have a exciting postscript coming up. There's more to read. You'll recognize some characters coming up. And let's get to it. See you next week. If you like what you hear, go ahead and rate us 3 Silmarils out of 3. Follow us everywhere at Before the Fellowship. Join the discussion on Discord, and link is in the description. And send any comments or questions to beforethefellowship@gmail.com. Join us next week as we read the greatest story you've never heard, Silmarillion, I guess. Well, by J.R.R. Tolkien.